Picture this. You're sitting across from your 8-year-old granddaughter, and instead of sharing stories or playing together, she's completely absorbed in a glowing screen. You try to engage her in conversation, but she responds with, "Just a minute, Grandma," without even looking up. Sound painfully familiar? Or maybe it's your teenage grandson, speaking in what feels like a foreign language, throwing around words like slay, no cap, and period, while you sit there wondering when communication became so complicated. Hello, dear friends. Today we're embarking on a journey together, a journey to bridge what might feel like an impossible gap between your wisdom and their world, between the values you hold dear and the digital landscape they call home. You see, I used to believe that this new digital world was simply beyond my reach. I'd watch my grandchildren navigate their phones with lightning speed, effortlessly switching between apps I'd never heard of, and I'd feel like I was watching visitors from another planet. Does this resonate with you? But what if I told you that staying connected to your grandchildren in this digital age isn't about becoming someone you're not? It's about being more authentically yourself while meeting them where they are. Today, I want to share 5 transformative strategies that changed not just my relationship with technology, but more importantly, my relationship with the grandchildren I adore. These aren't about keeping up with every trend or becoming a social media expert. They're about creating meaningful connections that honor both your wisdom and their world, building bridges instead of walls, and discovering that love truly does transcend every generation gap. So settle into your favorite chair, perhaps with a cup of coffee or tea, and let's explore how to become the grandparent your grandchildren will remember, not just with fondness, but with deep, lasting connection. Tip number 1, becoming a curious student instead of a concerned judge. Let me tell you about my friend Harold. Harold was a retired school principal, a man who had spent 40 years maintaining order and teaching lessons. When his 11-year-old grandson Jake would visit, Harold would watch in dismay, as Jake seemed glued to his tablet, playing games Harold couldn't understand, watching videos that seemed, frankly, ridiculous. Harold's first instinct was to do what he'd always done, establish rules and limits. "Put that thing away when I'm talking to you. Why don't you go outside and play like kids used to?" In my day, we found ways to entertain ourselves. The result? Jake became increasingly withdrawn during visits, answering questions with one-word responses, counting down the minutes until he could return to his digital world. Everything changed the day Harold made a simple but profound shift. Instead of saying, "Put that away," he said, "That looks interesting. Can you show me how it works?" Jake's face lit up in a way Harold hadn't seen in months. What followed was a 45-minute explanation of Minecraft, a game Harold had previously dismissed as pointless. Jake showed him elaborate structures he'd built, explained the problem-solving required, described how he collaborated with friends from school to create entire cities. Harold found himself genuinely impressed by the creativity, planning, and teamwork involved. But here's what truly transformed their relationship. Harold began asking Jake to teach him things, not just about games, but about how to send photos through text messages, how to video call his cousin in Florida, how to look up old songs on YouTube. Jake went from being a distracted visitor to being Harold's enthusiastic technology teacher. And Harold discovered something beautiful. When you approach your grandchildren's world with genuine curiosity instead of judgment, you become someone they want to spend time with. The key is shifting from "why are you always on that thing?" to "what are you discovering on that thing?" From "this is nothing like what we used to do" to "help me understand what makes this interesting to you." Your grandchildren aren't choosing screens over you because they don't love you. They're immersed in these digital spaces because that's where their friends are, where their interests live, where they're building skills and having experiences that matter to them. When you show genuine interest in their digital world, you're not endorsing everything about it. You're saying, "I care about what matters to you." Why? Because you matter to me. Start small. Ask them to show you one thing they enjoy doing on their device. Don't worry about understanding everything immediately. Focus on their enthusiasm, their expertise, their joy in sharing something they care about with someone who cares about them.
Harold told me something profound a few months after this shift. He said, "I thought I was the one with all the wisdom to share. But Jake has taught me more than I've taught him, about resilience, about creativity, about connecting with people across distances. I was so busy protecting my world that I almost missed entering his."
Tip number 2, creating digital traditions that honor both worlds. Technology doesn't have to replace traditions. It can enhance them in ways we never imagined possible. My friend Margaret learned this when her daughter moved across the country with Margaret's 2 young grandsons. For months, Margaret grieved the loss of the Sunday afternoon visits, the bedtime story readings, the impromptu baking sessions that had been the foundation of their relationship. Margaret's daughter suggested video calls, but Margaret resisted. "It's not the same as being there," she insisted. And she was right. It wasn't the same, but what Margaret discovered was that different doesn't always mean worse. The breakthrough came when Margaret suggested they have a virtual baking day. She and 6-year-old Emma would both gather ingredients, set up their laptops in their respective kitchens, and bake the same recipe together while talking through the screen. That first session was admittedly chaotic. Flour flew, Emma got distracted, and Margaret fumbled with the technology. But something magical happened in the midst of the mess. They were laughing together, sharing a moment that bridged the miles between them. This virtual baking tradition evolved beautifully. Margaret would mail Emma recipe cards she'd handwritten, just like the ones Margaret's own grandmother had shared with her. Emma would help choose which recipe they'd tackle next. They'd both take photos of their finished products and text them to each other with silly captions. But Margaret didn't stop there. She discovered that technology could enhance traditions in ways she'd never considered. She started recording herself reading Emma's favorite stories, so Emma could hear Grandma's voice at bedtime, even when they couldn't video call. She learned to send voice messages through WhatsApp, letting Emma hear the enthusiasm in her voice when she shared news about her garden or asked about Emma's school day. Margaret began creating what she called memory packages, digital photo albums that combined old family photos with recent ones, telling the story of how Emma was connected to previous generations. She'd narrate these albums and send them to Emma, who treasured seeing herself as part of a larger family story. The key insight here is profound. Tradition isn't about the exact format. It's about the love, connection, and sense of belonging that traditions create. When we use technology to preserve and share what matters most, We're not abandoning our values. We're using new tools to express timeless ones. Consider starting your own digital traditions. Maybe it's a weekly video call where you share 3 things you're grateful for with each other. Perhaps it's taking photos of the same tree in your yard through the seasons and sharing them with your grandchildren, teaching them to notice nature's cycles. It could be as simple as sending a daily text with an encouraging thought, or sharing a photo of your morning coffee with a loving message. One grandmother I know started a question of the week tradition with her teenage granddaughter. Every Sunday, she'd text a thoughtful question, not "How was school?" but things like, "If you could have dinner with anyone from history, who would it be and what would you ask them?" The granddaughter began looking forward to these questions and would often call to discuss her answers. These digital traditions work because they combine the consistency and intentionality of traditional rituals with the convenience and immediacy of modern communication. Your grandchildren learn that staying connected with family isn't just about obligatory holiday visits. It's about ongoing relationship and genuine interest in each other's lives. Tip number 3, sharing your stories in ways that capture their imagination. Your stories are treasures, but the way you share them can determine whether they become family legends or forgotten history. Let me tell you about my friend Robert, whose grandson Tyler would politely listen to stories about the old days while clearly waiting for them to end so he could return to his video games. Robert felt discouraged. He had lived through fascinating times, had witnessed incredible changes in the world, had overcome challenges and celebrated victories that could inspire anyone. But Tyler seemed completely uninterested in anything that happened before he was born. The transformation began when Robert discovered something important. Tyler wasn't uninterested in stories. He was uninterested in the way stories were typically told. The breakthrough came during a family barbecue, when Tyler was showing Robert a video game set during World War II. Instead of dismissing it, Robert surprised Tyler by saying, "You know, my father fought in that war. Let me tell you what he told me about what it was really like." But here's what Robert did differently. Instead of launching into a long, detailed account, he pulled out his phone and showed Tyler a photo of his father in uniform, then found a map app and showed Tyler exactly where his grandfather had served, then pulled up historical photos online to show what that place looked like during the war. Tyler was mesmerized. The story became interactive, visual, and connected to something Tyler already found interesting. Robert wasn't just talking about the past. He was making it come alive in the present. This experience inspired Robert to revolutionize how he shared family history. He started creating what he called story packages, combining old photographs, documents, maps, and even music from different eras to tell family stories in multimedia format. For Tyler's birthday, Robert created a digital presentation about Tyler's great-great-grandfather, who had been a railroad engineer. Instead of just describing the job, Robert found YouTube videos of old steam engines, historical photos of the railroad lines his ancestor had worked on, even recordings of train sounds from that era. He interviewed elderly neighbors who remembered when trains regularly passed through their town, recording their memories on his smartphone. The result? Tyler became genuinely fascinated by this ancestor he'd never heard much about, and began asking Robert to create similar presentations about other family members. But Robert's success went deeper than just finding better ways to tell stories. He discovered that his grandchildren weren't just interested in family history. They were interested in how their family's experiences connected to the larger world they were learning about. When Tyler studied the civil rights movement in school, Robert was ready with stories about how his own parents had lived through that era, complete with newspaper clippings he'd found online, music from the period, and photos of their hometown during those transformative years. The magic happens when you connect your stories to their interests, their school subjects, their questions about the world. When Tyler became interested in cooking through a video game about running a restaurant, Robert shared stories about his mother's cooking, but he also found historical information about how the ingredients she used had traveled to America, how cooking techniques had changed over time, how family recipes connected them to their cultural heritage. Technology becomes a bridge, not a barrier. When you use it to make your stories more engaging, more visual, more connected to your grandchildren's existing interests and curiosity. Start simple. Take photos of old family pictures with your phone and text them to your grandchildren with short stories about the people in them. Look up historical events online that connect to your family's experiences. Record yourself telling important family stories so they can be preserved and shared. Your stories aren't just entertainment, they're identity. They help your grandchildren understand where they come from, what challenges their family has overcome, what strengths and values they've inherited. But they'll only treasure these stories if you share them in ways that capture their imagination and connect to their world. Tip number 4, finding balance between screen time and sacred time. This might be the most delicate balance of all, honoring your grandchildren's digital world while also creating space for the deeper connections that happen away from screens. Let me share the story of my friend Dorothy, whose family visits had become exercises in frustration. Her 3 grandchildren, ages 7 to 15, would arrive with multiple devices, spend most of the visit looking at screens, and leave with Dorothy feeling like she'd barely connected with them at all. Dorothy's first attempts to address this created more tension than connection. She'd announce no devices during grandma time, which led to sulking, arguments, and children who counted the minutes until they could return to their digital worlds. The transformation began when Dorothy stopped fighting against screen time and started thinking strategically about creating irresistible alternatives. Dorothy's breakthrough was understanding that you can't simply take away something your grandchildren value. You have to offer something they value more. The key was discovering what that might be for each unique grandchild. For 12-year-old Sophie, who was obsessed with social media, Dorothy proposed they create a photo adventure around Dorothy's neighborhood. They'd walk together, taking pictures of interesting things they found: flowers, old architecture, interesting signs, friendly dogs. Then they'd return to Dorothy's house, and Sophie would help Dorothy post the best photos to her own Facebook account, teaching Dorothy about hashtags and captions in the process. Sophie loved being Dorothy's social media mentor, and Dorothy loved having Sophie's undivided attention during their photo walks. The screen became a tool for connection rather than a barrier to it. For 7-year-old Marcus, who loved video games, Dorothy learned about his favorite characters and incorporated them into traditional activities. They'd build blanket forts that Marcus would pretend were from his favorite game. They'd bake cookies shaped like game characters. Dorothy even learned enough about his favorite game to ask meaningful questions about his achievements and strategies. For 15-year-old Ashley, who was always texting friends, Dorothy suggested they plan a surprise birthday party for Ashley's mom, Dorothy's daughter, via text message. Ashley became the technology coordinator,
teaching Dorothy how to create group texts, share photos, and coordinate with other family members. The planning process brought them together around a shared loving goal.
The wisdom Dorothy discovered is this: you don't need to eliminate technology to create meaningful connections. You need to use technology intentionally, while also creating experiences that naturally draw your grandchildren away from their devices. Dorothy also learned to set gentle, reasonable boundaries that felt collaborative rather than punitive. Instead of no phones during dinner, she'd say, "Let's put our phones in this basket so we can focus on each other while we eat." "I'll put mine in too," instead of competing with their devices. She made unplugging feel like a special, shared experience. But perhaps Dorothy's most important discovery was about timing. She learned to pay attention to when her grandchildren naturally put their devices down, when they were genuinely tired of screens, when they were looking for something else to do. Those were the moments to suggest alternatives, not when they were deeply engaged with their devices. Dorothy began creating what she called irresistible invitations, activities so appealing that her grandchildren would willingly set aside their devices to participate. Cooking their favorite meals together, building elaborate art projects, having dance parties in the living room, planning surprise gifts for their parents, going on mystery drives to new places. The key was making these activities feel special, not ordinary. Dorothy would say things like, "I have an idea for something fun we could do together. Are you up for an adventure?" Rather than, "You've been on that thing long enough." One of Dorothy's most successful strategies was creating anticipation activities, things her grandchildren could look forward to that didn't involve screens. She'd text them during the week, with hints about something special they'd do together during their next visit. She'd ask them to help her plan family celebrations. She'd invite them to choose the menu for their next cooking adventure together. Dorothy discovered that when children have something special to anticipate, something that makes them feel valued and included, they're much more willing to engage fully when the time comes. The balance you're seeking isn't about perfect screen to non-screen ratios. It's about ensuring that technology enhances rather than replaces the loving connections that make grandparent-grandchild relationships so precious. Your goal isn't to win a war against technology. It's to demonstrate that some of life's best experiences happen when we're fully present with people we love. Tip number 5. Building bridges through shared digital adventures. The most profound connections often happen when you stop seeing technology as their thing and start exploring it together as fellow adventurers. Let me tell you about my friend William, who at 73 felt completely intimidated by his grandson's digital world. 13-year-old David seemed to live in a universe of online games, social media platforms, and digital communication that felt foreign, and frankly, a little frightening to William. William's initial response was to avoid engaging with David's interests altogether. He'd ask about school, sports, and friends, but whenever the conversation turned to David's online activities, William would change the subject or offer gentle criticism about spending too much time on screens. The relationship began to feel strained. David started giving shorter and shorter answers to William's questions, and William felt increasingly irrelevant to his grandson's life. The transformation began with a simple but courageous decision. William asked David to teach him about one thing David enjoyed doing online, not to judge or limit it, but to genuinely understand it. David chose to introduce William to Google Earth, a program that lets you explore any place in the world through satellite imagery and street views. William was immediately fascinated. They spent the entire afternoon virtually visiting places William had been during his military service, exploring the town where William had grown up, even taking a virtual tour of famous landmarks they both hoped to visit someday. This shared exploration opened something beautiful between them. William began sharing stories about the places they visited digitally, and David began asking thoughtful questions about William's experiences and observations. But the real magic happened when they started planning virtual adventures together. David would research interesting places online during the week, then present his findings to William during their next visit. They'd virtually explore these places together, with William sharing historical context, and David navigating the technology. Their digital adventures expanded beyond geography. David introduced William to YouTube channels about history, cooking, and vintage cars, subjects that interested them both. William learned to use the platform to find old music and television shows from his era, which David found genuinely fascinating. They started creating their own content together. David helped William record videos of himself sharing family stories, which they edited together and shared with other family members. William learned to use FaceTime to stay in touch with David between visits, and David helped William set up Facebook to reconnect with old friends. The breakthrough moment came when William suggested they research their family genealogy together using online resources. David's technology skills, combined with William's knowledge of family history, created a powerful team. They uncovered relatives they didn't know they had, found historical documents and photographs, and created a comprehensive digital family tree that became treasured by the entire extended family. William told me something profound about this experience. He said, "I thought David's digital world was taking him away from real relationships. I didn't realize it could actually deepen our real relationship." When we explore technology together, I'm not just learning about computers. I'm learning about how David thinks, what excites him, what he's curious about. This approach works because it transforms you from an outsider looking in to a fellow explorer. Your grandchildren don't just want you to tolerate their digital interests. They want to share them with someone who matters to them. The key is approaching these shared adventures with genuine curiosity rather than hidden agendas. Don't join their digital world to monitor or control their activities. Join it to understand and connect with them. Start small. Ask your grandchild to show you one app or website they enjoy. Express genuine interest in what makes it appealing to them. Ask questions that show you want to understand, not judge. Consider collaborative projects that combine your strengths. Maybe you help them research a school project using your knowledge while they handle the technology. Perhaps you work together to create digital photo albums or video messages for other family members. William and David's story illustrates something powerful. When you approach your grandchildren's digital world as a bridge rather than a barrier, you discover that love and connection can flourish in any environment where people choose to be genuinely present with each other.
Your grandchildren aren't asking you to become a different person. They're inviting you to expand who you already are. Your wisdom doesn't become less valuable when it's shared through new formats. It becomes more accessible and relevant to the people you love most.
Bringing it all together, your digital grandparenting transformation.
My dear friends, we've journeyed through 5 powerful strategies for bridging the gap between your wisdom and your grandchildren's digital world. Let's weave these approaches together
into a sustainable practice that can transform your relationships while honoring who you are.
The beauty of these 5 tips is that they work synergistically, each one supporting and amplifying the others. When you approach technology with curiosity instead of judgment, you naturally discover opportunities for shared adventures. When you create digital traditions, you're also finding balance between screen time and sacred time. When you share your stories in engaging ways, you're building bridges through common interests.
But here's what I want you to understand most clearly. You don't need to become a technology expert to implement these strategies. You don't need to understand every platform, learn every app, or keep up with every trend. You simply need to approach your grandchildren's world with the same love, curiosity, and wisdom you bring to every other aspect of grandparenting. Start with one approach that resonates most strongly with you right now. Perhaps it's asking your grandchild to teach you about something they enjoy online. Maybe it's suggesting a virtual activity you could do together. It could be as simple as taking a photo of something interesting and texting it to them with a loving message. Choose something so small that success feels inevitable. If sharing stories digitally appeals to you, start by taking a photo of one old family picture and sending it with a brief story about the people in it. If creating digital traditions calls to you, suggest one simple activity you could do together via video call. Be patient with yourself as you begin. You're not trying to become someone you're not. You're expanding the ways you can connect with people you love. Some attempts will feel more natural than others, and that's perfectly normal. As your first chosen approach begins to feel comfortable, you can gently add another element. Perhaps after successfully sharing one story digitally, you start planning a shared online adventure, or after establishing a simple digital tradition, you begin exploring ways to find balance between screen time and face-to-face connection. I want to address something that might be weighing on your heart. The fear that you've already missed too many opportunities to connect, that the gap between your world and theirs has grown too wide to bridge. I understand this fear, but I'm here to tell you with absolute conviction, it's never too late to deepen your relationship with your grandchildren. Every moment of genuine connection builds upon the foundation of love that already exists between you. Your grandchildren don't need you to be like them. They need you to be authentically yourself while meeting them where they are. They don't want you to abandon your values or wisdom. They want to see how your values and wisdom apply to their world. These strategies don't require you to become a different person. They invite you to become a more connected version of who you already are. Your love doesn't need updating, just new expressions. Your wisdom doesn't need replacement, just new channels of sharing. Think about what your relationship with your grandchildren could look like 6 months from now, if you consistently practiced even 1 or 2 of these approaches. Imagine having meaningful conversations about things that matter to them, sharing your stories in ways that capture their imagination, creating new traditions that honor both your heritage and their interests. This isn't just a dream, it's entirely possible. I've seen it happen for grandparents who felt completely disconnected from their grandchildren's digital world, who worried they'd become irrelevant in the age of smartphones and social media, who discovered instead that love truly does transcend every generation gap. Your relationship with your grandchildren is one of the most precious gifts life offers. It deserves your courage, your curiosity, and your willingness to explore new ways of expressing the timeless love that connects your hearts. Your bridge-building journey begins today. As we come to the end of our time together, I want to leave you with both a gentle challenge and a profound truth.
The challenge: choose one small step from what we've discussed and commit to it for just this week. Not forever, not perfectly. Just one attempt to meet your grandchildren where they are, while remaining authentically yourself. Notice what happens to your connection, your understanding, your relationship.
The profound truth: your grandchildren need you more than they might express. They need your wisdom, your stories, your unconditional love, and your perspective on life. They don't need these gifts delivered in outdated packages. They need them wrapped in language they understand, shared through channels they value, expressed in ways that honor both your experience and theirs. In a world that changes so rapidly it can feel overwhelming, you represent continuity, stability, and enduring love. In a digital landscape that can feel isolating despite its connectivity, you offer genuine relationship and authentic presence. In a generation learning to navigate unprecedented challenges, you provide wisdom earned through decades of living, loving, and growing. You are not too old to learn new ways of connecting. You are not too set in your ways to explore new avenues of relationship. You are not irrelevant to your grandchildren's modern lives. You are exactly what they need to help them make sense of both where they come from and where they're going. I see you, dear friend. I see you loving your grandchildren so much that you're willing to step outside your comfort zone to stay connected with them. I see your concern about a changing world and your determination to remain a positive influence in young lives that matter deeply to you. Your bridge-building journey doesn't start tomorrow or when you feel fully prepared. It starts right now, with your very next interaction with your grandchildren. Will you choose curiosity over judgment? Will you ask them to teach you something new? Will you share a story in a way that connects to their interests? Will you suggest a shared digital adventure? Whatever you choose, know that you're not alone in this journey. Grandparents around the world are discovering that love truly does find a way to bridge every gap, including the digital divide that sometimes feels so intimidating. Your grandchildren are lucky to have someone who cares enough about the relationship to grow and adapt. They're blessed to have a grandparent willing to meet them where they are, while sharing the wisdom of where you've been. The bridge between your wisdom and their world isn't built by abandoning who you are. It's built by expanding how you express who you are. It's constructed not through perfect understanding of every app and platform, but through perfect commitment to the relationships that matter most. Welcome to your digital grandparenting transformation. Dear friend, your bridge-building journey begins now. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If these ideas resonated with you, please share them with another grandparent who might benefit from these gentle strategies. And tell me in the comments which of these 5 tips feels most important for your relationship with your grandchildren. Until we meet again, may your connections be genuine, may your curiosity be endless, and may your love be the constant that guides every grandparenting adventure, whether digital or otherwise. Your grandchildren are waiting for you. On the other side of that bridge, all you need to do is take the first step.